Hi, and welcome to another Aptera episode of the Aussie Ideas Man. Yes, it's been nearly 2 months since I made one, and the nonsense at Aptera deserves the nod for being the topic at hand. It's just a goldmine for the things to question. I hope to follow up soon with a video on why I regard Steve from the stupidly named Aptera Owners Club, here on called AOC, to be a cretin. But first, I want to revisit the best of a long list of reasons why I can't see a production model ever being made. And that is, the skin cooling won't work, as far as I can tell by what is revealed. Sure, I have made a video on this one once before, and I have often commented in other videos, but the explanations from Aptera, what few there are, have changed and make the concept even more bizarre than in their first cartoon that I used. This video will incorporate the additions and again challenge Aptera and any disciples to refute my claims and show us why they think it will work. It was not done the first time, and I am certain it won't be done now that I have updated the issues, or more specifically, the lies. Aptera disciples are some of the most gullible people on the planet, and all they can do is call me a troll and make up all sorts of derogatory accusations as to why I shouldn't question the wisdom of Steve Fambro and Chris Anthony, the almighty founders of the once failed silly trike, who seemingly can do no wrong. Stuff like, I am not an engineer. Apparently one has to be an engineer or you have no right to question anything. And that's one of their better accusations. Well, a fool and his money are soon parted, and this video is a warning that tens of thousands of fools are likely to part ways with their investments and deposits before Christmas, unless they can start thinking more clearly and opening their eyes to all the signs. I can't make a video of them all, but skin cooling not working was the cause of the first failure, and it will likely be the cause of the next. Gullible people actually think the first failure was due to lack of funds. But as with most lies in this world, what they tell you is not what really is. Had funds been the real issue, there was no need to destroy the finished prototypes for a start. But even if funds was a contributor, the fact of the matter is no working prototype has proven its skin cooling system was viable, and the one in the race broke down due to overheating. There has been no proof that it works in the newer version of Aptera either. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty of what Aptera Matters has been revealing about the skin cooling, and I will do it in chronological order. It's a pity I didn't record and save an interview with Chris Anthony once with someone where he claimed skin cooling was like that on an animal, because I would have loved to use it. Over the past year he has also likened it to shark skin, but that is also lost in the plethora of Aptera videos on YouTube. After a long search, the nearest I could get was on skin cooling cartoon where it says biological inspired channels are used. There is no biology in it, and the channels and the coolant within are identical to what's in an engine when a radiator is used. What is eliminated is the radiator itself and its fan, but apart from that, the process is much the same, including having a pump to circulate the coolant. Biological means are when the skin sweats for land animals, and Apteras don't do that. The biology for sharks is irrelevant because sharks aren't dissipating their heat into the water. I think their skin works in a reverse order, keeping heat in and cold out, and Aptera doesn't do that either. From here we can jump to my video that questioned this cartoon Aptera had made about their biological inspiration. Because I had many questions that were never answered by anybody who commented, I will replay the section as it appeared in challenging the deluded Aptera disciples to answer some hard questions. I added some more overlays to better highlight the folly in the cartoon they made. This is so that you can contrast it with a later video and see how very different the two explanations are.
Another matter I overlooked in Reasons to Run a Mile was where Chris told Jay the cooling system worked like an animal skin because it was more efficient, and I don't know how I omitted it because it pricked my BS meter instantly. Well, I did my research this time and have to challenge Aptera Motors and all of its deluded disciples to explain both. 1. What makes it skin-like, and 2. How is it more efficient than a radiator? Here's the 1 minute and 3 second cartoon Aptera Motors provides, which tells us it has coolant channels through the skin. Radiators have coolant channels, so it's more like a radiator, but with one big bugbear. All the radiator channels are open to the outside air by having a hole in front, like the jet plane they drew. Air is forced all around the channels, which is pumped around the engine for convection to take place. If the car isn't moving, a fan kicks in to imitate movement. Animal skins have pores, and inside the animal has sweat glands. There are no channels, but sweat passes out through the pores and sits outside the skin, where the atmosphere evaporates it and thereby cools the skin. The body then cools by convection without pumping and having no need for movement and an artificial simulation of it. Clearly, the channels in the body are more like those in a radiator, but how can that be more efficient? The body blocks the coolant in the channels from direct air, much like putting a glass pane in front of a radiator. There is no fan for when the EV is stationary, and importantly, there is no empirical data provided to explain why the system further removed from the air can be more efficient. It doesn't even explain where the channels take the cooled air. They can reach the battery pack, but it is evident they don't go to the motor. Chris told Jay in his question about that, the motors stay cool enough. Was he just saying it by magic? The animal skin claim is absurd, and the logic doesn't stack up when you see the alternative radiator. So there's the challenge to Aptera, their ambassadors, the owners club members, and every other deluded and conned disciple. Explain how the system is better than radiators in cars. My BS meter tells me it is one more of many gimmicks and definitely unproven.
Next we have AAC's video, where Daniel shows Steve the top plate for battery thermal management, which is the closest Aptera has been to explaining skin cooling since the cartoon, but it is integral to it, and there is no other explanation around. I grabbed a copy from Exclusive First Peek at the Aptera's thermal management and testing rig, so that a comparison can be made with the cartoon. So let's watch it while I interrupt with comparisons and observations. If you want to see the original uninterrupted version, it is still on YouTube, but I have the whole conversation.
Okay, I'm here with Daniel, and Daniel's going to show us the thermal management system.
Yeah, so a couple of you guys probably know me. So right now I'm the thermal and HVAC systems lead here at Aptera. So this is going to be our main kind of workbench. Probably a little bit different than what some people might be expecting, but having worked on a bunch of thermal systems before, I can tell you get coolant everywhere.
Now, here we go, first interjection. Daniel says the setup is so that they don't get coolant everywhere, but they didn't need to have that setup in the building at all. It would be far better to have a beta prototype built and tested outside, where changing temperatures occur naturally and leaks just land on the ground. There is a lot more wrong with this thermal management system, here on called TMS, as we get through his waffle.
So that's what this is intended to.
So this just contains the coolant that's
exactly,
spilled. Got it.
Exactly. So even if you just had this being flat here, you'd get coolant that follows it, and it's still on the ground. So it's quite messy. So yeah, and we will be testing this kind of in the office with a bunch of people around. So
he says that it can be tested in the office, and that is the problem with everything about Aptera. It's all simulations done at computer desks and nothing real. The main purpose of the TMS is to keep the floor clean, and all the effort is for that. It's not important that the original Aptera failed because of overheating problems. Meanwhile, the obligatory alpha has to be in the shot, as with just about every other video. And there are more men working on it than on the TMS, but really nothing being done.
we don't want to be having people walk through coolant and track it everywhere. So it's kind of the main purpose here.
The main purpose is having clean floors while not building a beta prototype, which they originally said there would be between 6 and 12 to test everything properly. Now there is just the one, with little tested on it. The thing has a radiator.
Down at the end, we have a couple of control boxes. So we'll have high voltage power that comes in to kind of power different heaters and different dummy thermal loads.
Okay.
So this is not a full rolling vehicle, so the other kind of thermal components can be simulated.
Okay.
So we will kind of have a full vehicle worth of like thermal components on this bench, but that obviously kind of is going to be very testing focused setup.
Already, Dan's waffling about it not being a full vehicle test, but the little bit of the system you see is nothing like the cartoon explanation, where 3 channels put fluid through doors that open and dead end at the back, which of itself is absolutely ridiculous. The channels are not near the batteries nor the belly, and are so thin they would break over small bumps in the road.
So we can run through tests and not have to go drive a vehicle through Death Valley or something. We
Right.
can essentially drive it through Death Valley here, where we can turn some knobs and we can do that.
Got it.
In the office.
This new way allows the office to be Death Valley if they like. Almost every claim is from simulations, and this simulator has holes I could drive a truck through.
So so we'll use this to help develop our control systems for kind of the different heating cooling modes that the Aptera will be in, depending on ambient conditions and conditions inside the cabin and all the other factors.
Okay. So is this the simulated belly pan?
So this is our battery cooling plate.
Okay.
Danny Boy tells Steve it's just the cooling plate for the batteries, but this is not intended to go in a production model where they need 4 sizes, one for each model. To get an idea what that is, it's placed atop the battery so that as heat rises from them, it heats up. Then coolant in channels flow around such that they remove the heat from the plate and take it elsewhere.
Which is also pretty similar to the belly pan.
Okay.
Then he lies again by saying the belly plate is similar by being flat, when the belly is almost bowl-shaped and the top plate is completely flat.
They're both kind of flat plate heat exchangers
Okay.
with coolant that runs through them. So what we learned from this, so this is an early kind of sample part, so what we learned from this can help feed into the actual production parts. So we're not spending a bunch of money on production tooling without having any idea if it's going to work. So
They don't spend a cent on production tooling because the trike is probably never intended to go into production. So far, nothing has been spent for any physical part of a production machine.
So there's 2 coolant pans. There's one for the battery pack and a separate one for the belly pan.
So the battery pack coolant plate will pull the heat out of the battery.
Okay.
And then the belly pan takes that heat and then rejects it to
Okay.
the ambient air.
Okay.
So there are 2 different steps in it, right? So
Right.
one's kind of absorbing heat, one is rejecting heat.
Okay.
Here's where the rejection of heat is totally unproven. A radiator is designed to take the boiling hot coolant in and cool it well enough to return and cool an engine because of the many fins and the distance it travels through. We all know they work well, as they are in every internal combustion car. However, taking the heat from batteries and getting the airflow under them to cool it is a complete unknown, and no simulations will get an answer. Only a well-built prototype can provide that. The nearest we have to that is the previous Aptera that failed to finish a race because it overheated. In the current iterations, there has been no reason given to believe they have rectified that problem. They just say that less heat will be generated, but it's down to the computer simulations and no on-road tests. I will give my reasons why I think the new explanation from Danny Boy is hogwash. Let's examine the diagram they supply of the supposed 1,000 miler and start by claiming they are highly unlikely to ever make it on the basis of putting the last 400 miles of power has to be almost upright behind the seats. If that's there, they can't put a flat top pan over all the batteries like Dan is showing Steve, so I have roughly drawn in blue over the rest as if it's not there. This is about as much of the TMS as they are testing and showing AOC. So now I draw in blue the essential bits they need to test the TMS, even on a simulator. It is a connecting channel at the back and one at the front, with a flat bottom plate that is the skin of the trike in between. Without all of this, plus the pump connected to circulate the coolant and airflow under the belly pan, no results can be gathered. The flat pan will reduce Aptera's supposed aerodynamic efficiency and be unusable as a belly because wafer-thin channel metal will puncture whenever small stones strike. Dan actually says it's flat and exposed, yet Chris Anthony points to the curved composite belly of the Apteras and says that's how it is, and he claims the composite is 7 times stronger than steel. None of the 4 prototypes have an aluminium belly pan, and the gamma drawing is clearly missing a flat aluminium belly pan. However, the lack of curvature and its flimsy aluminium are not the only problems with this new TMS. It has a thermal problem that not even the experts in all things, Bruce Nelson, has been able to grasp, even after I had explained it to him. Listen carefully. I'm talking about where heat mostly goes and how the positioning of each pan sends heat more to where you don't want it to go. In the channels, heat moves through the system in a circular motion because the pump moves the coolant it is in. But to get in and out of the coolant, it mostly goes up and hardly goes down. If you think it is a 50-50 egress, think again. As an example, light a match and hold your forefinger half an inch above the flame while holding your thumb a quarter an inch below it. Then tell me which gets burnt. It will be your finger, even though it is twice the distance away. If you don't want to burn yourself, just light a match in still air and promptly hold the head of it straight up. Get a friend to light one at the same time, and he immediately hold the head about 60 degrees below horizontal. His flame will quickly start to burn him, while yours will be hardly down the stalk, if it doesn't go out altogether. Every fireman knows fires race up hillside slopes and barely spreads downwards. Now, put this fact into the silly simulator and you will see why the system is flawed. The top plate is correctly positioned to collect battery heat because it is over them and closely as possible, and the pump can send that hot coolant into the belly pan. But here is where the system falls apart. Now we have ambient air flowing under the pan, which cools it at a similar rate to the match head being at the top, while the pan is feeding heat back into the batteries at a rate similar to the match head burning the stalk from the bottom. It doesn't remove all the heat into the external ambient air. In fact, it is far worse than 50% of it, and without me having built a simulator, my estimate would be under 10% is expunged, and at least 90% returns into the batteries. This is the very reason why the racing Aptera overheated.
Except when they flip directions when you're heating the battery up when it's really, really cold inside, so you kind of flip the purpose, but yeah, so that's generally how that works.
In the reverse situation, where Dan says the batteries require heating, it fares no better. We start with the external ambient air giving the coolant in the belly pan its temperature, which is never more than about 110 degrees Fahrenheit or 45 Celsius. The pump moves it away as that tries to rise into the batteries and takes it above them, where it heats your butt at that 90% ratio, while the batteries get less than 10%. But the real problem is that batteries need heat mostly when the EV is motionless, and the external air is just getting cooler by the minute directly under the pan, unless you are lucky to have a stiff breeze. All of this needs a fully built system in a fully operating prototype to determine what it will do in every given situation a motorist finds himself in. And no office staff at their computers can replicate them all with just a top pan on a table in the next room that has a pump drop on the table just as it was purchased from a hardware store, ready to take it back for a refund after AOC has been fooled.
So the belly is composite, right?
No, so the belly in the production vehicle will be aluminum.
Okay, because I was about to say, like, composite's not a very good heat exchanger.
Exactly, you're exactly right there. So we're going to have an aluminum belly pan.
Okay.
So that way we can really be very efficient in rejecting the heat.
I see. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that the control boxes? Is there anything there?
Yeah, so there's not quite anything in here yet. Controlling a test setup is a lot different than controlling the actual vehicle.
Okay.
So this pump here is huge, but it's linear, which is really nice.
Okay.
It's not very efficient.
Okay.
So for testing setups, it's perfect. You just be like, I want it in half. You can dial that in really easily. For kind of a centrifugal pump that's in most automotive applications because they're a lot more efficient. They're not very linear, so for testing setups, it's not as nice.
Okay.
So it's all about measuring things well, getting the data you need, making sure it's clean so you can resolve any differences that you did make.
And have you guys decided what kind of coolant you're using?
It's just going to be 50-50 glycol water mix.
Just like regular antifreeze
Yep,
coolant,
exactly.
automotive stuff.
There's
Okay.
nothing special needed there.
Okay. And this, you said, is the battery.
Yeah, so what you're looking at is the battery cooling plate, and it's actually an old version, so...
Okay, this is not the version that you would be using, probably.
No, but this is an older version that we have made. We have simulations that this is correlated to. So when you correlate your simulations, you have very high confidence in that you can use that simulation to iterate hundreds of times in the computer before you have to go spend money and wait.
Make another model, right?
It's all about, if you can get your simulations to be correlated, you can run through your designs and end up with something a lot better, a lot faster.
Okay, and so right now you're just trying to figure out, like, can it run at extreme high temperatures or extreme low temperatures?
Well, it's
You're
that,
putting that
and then
kind of load
it's characterizing kind of very specific factors on kind of the heat transfer coefficients. Now you can calculate and estimate some of those, but in the end, like, they're inputs to your simulation. So you need to characterize what those are first, so you can put those in and use that for your simulation.
Okay.
You can, like I said, we started off with a pretty good estimate as to what those coefficients were going to be. We tweaked them a little bit once we kind of got the data from this, and everything's lining up nicely.
Okay.